At 0530 local time, at the Sivash rail crossing on the northern ridge of occupied Crimea, a Russian Pantsir S-1 crew is finishing a routine shift. But unknown to them, 8 miles out across the lagoon, a Ukrainian FP-2 strike drone is racing over the water, 30 feet above the waves, holding a course somebody in Ukraine typed into it 3 days ago. Its camera has already found the concrete piers of their causeway. The Pantsir crew has no idea it's there. The Pantsir's search radar snags a return over the water, loses it, snags it again. At 0532, 2 missiles scream off the rails, and the launch shoves the chassis back hard enough that the gunner feels it in his teeth. 10 seconds of flight, a long 10 seconds, against a target that refuses to change a single thing it's doing. The first missile tears over the drone's right wingtip and keeps going. The second cracks open over empty water, close enough to dimple the sea. The drone doesn't climb. 100 feet higher and the Pantsir gets an honest look, and the mission ends right here in the Sivash. It stays down, 30 feet, low enough that the salt haze off the lagoon keeps beating on the camera glass, low enough that one wrong foot of altitude in the wrong half second would end the mission without a single Russian ever knowing they'd won. On the causeway, the launcher cycles. Exhaust boils across the roadbed. The turret whips a degree left, and the gunner works the sequence exactly the way the simulator taught him. Calm and by the numbers. Small target, low, crossing left to right. Clean inputs, clean track, clean launch. A third missile tears off the rail after the crossing shape. It rips past 130 feet behind the drone and self-destructs in a puff over the lagoon. The turret tracks for 5 more seconds. Then the return dissolves into sea clutter as the drone slips below the line of the railbed, and the causeway's own embankment becomes a wall between Russia's radars and a Ukrainian warhead. Whoever drew this route knew precisely where that shadow falls. Pantsir S-1, NATO reporting name SA-22 Greyhound, parked at the throat of the rail corridor feeding Russia's southern front, guarding the trains Moscow can't afford to lose. Its radar picks a fighter out of clean sky at better than 20 miles, but against something the size of a picnic table, buried in the churn of sea clutter and skimming the wave tops, that number collapses to about 4. Each 57E6 missile tears off the rail at better than 2,300 miles an hour and reaches out roughly 20 kilometers. Call it downtown Los Angeles to Santa Monica. The missile has no seeker of its own. The truck watches the target and the missile at the same time and radio steering corrections the whole flight. A remote control car driven by a man looking through a telescope, and the car can't see a thing. Its warhead throws a cloud of fragments, and the proximity fuse has to trigger that cloud within about 30 feet of the target to matter. This drone gives the whole system 40 seconds to pull that off, once, at dawn. Final morning score: 3 missiles, 3 misses, 0 drones, and a very long report to write for Sevastopol. Published estimates put a 57E6 round between $200,000 and $500,000. So somewhere down the chain, a staff officer is about to write up to $1.5 million in a box next to a machine that never so much as twitched, and then he's going to have to sign it. Here's the part the simulator never showed him, and stay with this because it's the whole morning in one sentence. That radar doesn't really see position, it sees closure, how fast a target closes on the dish or opens away from it, straight down the beam. The FP-2 is crossing the beam at better than 100 miles an hour. Along it, toward the dish, the thing is barely moving at all. The filters that scrub sea spray off the track lag a full second behind every new bearing, so the fire control computer aims 11 seconds into the future off a track that already lives a second in the past. That gap drops the intercept point over 100 feet behind the real drone, against a fuse that needs 30. It's a quarterback throwing where the receiver used to be. The ball arrives a heartbeat late every time. The drone crosses into the far shore, heading unchanged, and slides down toward the rail line running south through the salt flats. It's about to follow that line like a highway. Look at the stubby airframe and the 2-cylinder piston engine driving a pusher prop at the tail. That machine just crossed one of the most defended causeways in this war without touching its own controls. A wingspan of about 8 feet, 1 sheet of plywood, which given what parts of this airframe are actually built from is less a joke than a spec sheet. Hauling a 266-pound warhead at around 105 miles an hour. Hugging the deck burns range the way a roof rack burns gas, and the planner spent those miles on purpose. Published range runs to 200 kilometers. Down here it's less, and what it buys is simple. No radar in Crimea ever gets a clean look. One more number closes the sale. That Pantsir on the causeway is a $14 million machine, and it just spent up to $1.5 million in missiles on an airframe whose Deep Strike sibling sells for $35,000. And the drone isn't hunting the fuel. Fuel is cheap, and Russia has an ocean of it. It's hunting the one thing on that train the plant in Bryansk can't build another of. It settles over the rails, stalking one specific train, and the train has no idea it exists. At 0552, 20 minutes out, in a control room west of the Dnipro, 3 operators from GUR, Ukraine's Military Intelligence Directorate, watched the camera feed slide across Crimean farmland. The pilot rests 2 fingers on a stick he hasn't touched since takeoff, a cold cup of coffee going colder at his elbow, because for the entire crossing, there's been nothing for a human being to add. The drone has flown every foot of it alone. What it's flying toward is why this unit exists. That line under the drone's nose, the corridor running north out of Gauntlet, the rail heart of the peninsula, is the artery this campaign is built around. Everything Russia hauls into Crimea over the Kerch Bridge gets sorted in Jankos yards and sent up this track toward the front. The unit flying the drone is GUR's Phantoms. Their campaign even has a name: Debenzinization, defueling. Ukraine has spent years squeezing every other way of moving that fuel. The Kerch ferries get hit, the road convoys get hit, the depots get hit, and freight trains are simply what's left standing. The Phantoms did the arithmetic on what's actually scarce. Tank wagons are cheap, and Russia has thousands. The mainline engines that pull them are not. The heavy freight class doing this haul rolls off its production line at roughly 40 new units a year, for a network spanning 11 time zones that can't simply order more. Disable one and you haven't stopped a train. You've deleted an engine from a very tight pool for months. 20 miles south of the tracks, somebody has been lying in wait for this drone since long before it launched. A crew dug into a tree line sees a strike drone-sized bloom on their intercept gear. The direction finders have swept this corridor all morning. The bearing points up the rail line. They light the jammer, and the truck's generator digs in under the load as 10 kilowatts head for the antennas. Broadband noise punches into the sky, and the air ahead of the FP2, the entire cone of it, for miles up the corridor. The satellite signal simply vanishes. The FP2 crosses the jammer's whole arc without one heading correction. Not a twitch, not a wobble, and in the tree line, a crew member quietly stops writing up his 13th confirmed shootdown of the year. That truck with the 4 whip antennas is the R-330Zh Zhitel, the most feared electronic warfare station on this corridor, and it is doing its job perfectly this morning while losing anyway. It pours something like 10 kilowatts of noise into the exact frequencies a satellite receiver listens to. A navigation satellite talks from 12,000 miles up, and by the time its signal has fallen all that way, it lands on a drone's antenna as the faintest whisper. The Zhitel, 20 miles out, hits that same antenna thousands of times louder. Any drone still trusting a satellite goes deaf inside a minute and wanders until it runs out of fuel. The FP2 never stopped listening to the sky. It just stopped trusting the loudest voice in it. Firepoint builds its own jam-resistant satellite antennas in-house, a small array that senses which bearing the noise is pouring from and shapes a blank spot in its own hearing on exactly that line. Noise-canceling headphones that aim the canceling. And beneath that sits the floor. Spinning gyroscopes and accelerometers log every turn and every second. It's driving a route it memorized with the windows blacked out, steering off nothing but the odometer and the wheel. Drift does creep in, sure, a few feet per mile. Against a rail line the drone is following, drift has nowhere to take it. The Zhitel is pouring 10 kilowatts into a receiver that has already turned its deaf side toward the truck. The electronics have had their turn. What waits at the next level crossing is cruder and a great deal louder. 8 miles out, 2 miles up the line, a Ural truck has sat beside the track since first light, and the train it's guarding is 14 minutes from the siding that saves it. A twin-barreled mount is bolted to the bed. A sergeant stands behind the grips. He hears the drone before anyone sees it. a lawnmower snarl drifting over trees where no lawnmower belongs. He shouts once, a single word that empties the cab of the truck and puts 2 loaders on the ammunition boxes. Then spins the hand wheels and walks the barrels onto the noise. The first burst screams into the dawn, the rope of tracer tearing at the piece of sky that noise came out of. In the control room, the pilot watches those streaks rise through the corner of the feed. He has a choice, and about 4 seconds to make it. Climb, and he's out of the gun's reach within a minute, and handed to every radar between here and Jankoy at the same instant. He puts his fingers on the stick for the first time all flight, eases the nose down another 10 feet, and holds course straight through the fire. Those 2 long barrels on the pedestal mount are the oldest trick in Russia's drone defense, and, on paper, the most dangerous thing this drone meets all morning. The Zu-23-2, twin 23mm cannon designed in the late 1950s, throwing close to 2,000 rounds a minute out past 2 kilometers. No radar, no computer, a gunner squints through an optical sight and leads the target by eye, the way his grandfather was taught. And there's the trouble. A shell needs about 2 seconds to cross a kilometer, and in those same 2 seconds, the drone slides a full 300 feet down the line, clear of whatever the gunner pointed. Every burst, the same math. So he has to fire at a patch of empty sky a full football field ahead of the nose, judged by eyeball, in flat dawn light. Skeet shooting at over half a mile, with iron sights at something that won't fly straight for him. The second burst tears past behind the tail, the third walks closer, and 1 round from it punches clean through the left wingtip, in through the bottom skin, out through the top, threading past every wire and spar that actually matters. The sergeant keeps firing until the shape drops behind the tree line, the barrels ticking as they cool, spent brass rolling in the truck bed around his boots, the smell of powder hanging over the crossing. This morning he'll report engaging a Ukrainian strike drone, and he won't even be lying. A 1950s cannon built to knock down propeller planes just emptied a magazine at a machine built partly out of aircraft plywood, flown from another oblast. It did its honest best, and that hole in the wingtip is going to matter in 6 minutes, but nobody knows it yet. Below the drone, the hunt tightens, and the target is moving. Crimea's rail map is an hourglass, and Jankoy is the pinch. Fuel comes over the Kirk Bridge from Russia, pools in the peninsula's depots, and funnels north through this corridor to reach the front, on a line whose parallel roads Ukraine has shot at all year. Eliminate 1 train in this squeeze, and everything behind it stops with it. But do it in the wrong place, and the Russians recover it. 9 miles ahead sits a passing loop, a stretch of siding long enough for a rescue to crawl in, couple on, and drag a stalled train clear of the main. The fuel train is rolling toward that loop right now at 40 miles an hour, and his 2 diesels loafing at half throttle, a clear signal and an empty line ahead. 13 now. Reach the loop, and a wreck gets shunted aside by lunch. Stall short of it in the open main, and there's nowhere to put it. The drone crests a low rise and drops back toward the rails. Right ahead is what the Phantoms came for, a boxy cab, a long hood, and 12 wheels turning under each of 2 machines bolted into one. Meet the 2TE-25KM, Bryansk heavy freight hauler, the backbone of Russia's southern network. And diesel undersells it. This is a rolling power plant. 2 sections, married nose to tail, and each carries its own 16-cylinder diesel, making 3,550 horsepower. Together, better than 7,000 horsepower. Neither engine ever touches a wheel. Each spins an alternator, and the electricity feeds a traction motor bolted to every axle. 12 powered axles across the pair. The lead cab commands all of it. Cut that cab out of the loop, and both engines idle all day while the wheels make nothing. It's a big rig where a motor, the computer, and the only ignition key all live in one glass box up front. The camera crawls back down the train. Coupled behind it, 42 loaded tankers, horizontal steel cylinders, one behind another, riding low and heavy on their springs. Cistern wagons, standard Russian pattern, each shell about 48 feet long and 10 across, holding roughly 66 tons of diesel behind a carbon steel wall built for loading pressure and nothing at all against a fragment. They're the reason the Phantoms never bother aiming at the fuel. Diesel won't light off a spark in open air. Punch a hole in one tank, though, and 66 tons pool under the wagon. Hold enough heat on that pool long enough and it lights, and then it starts working on the shell of the wagon behind. The whole string is coupled end to end, one long fuse wearing a coat of paint. The operator settles the crosshair and leaves the fuel alone. 42 wagons of it sliding past under the camera. Any one of them an easy fireball tonight on social media. He's aiming at the cab. What he doesn't know is that the best air defense system on this peninsula has been holding him on radar for 40 seconds, and it's already turning its tubes toward the sky. 4 minutes out, the operator's hand nudges the stick, and 150 miles away, inside the same heartbeat, the drone banks with him. There is no satellite dish on this machine's spine, and no American constellation behind it. Every piece of this link is Ukrainian. The FP-2 flew the crossing itself, but a human hand takes the last 2 minutes, straight through the drone's own camera over a radio control channel. And radio at 30 feet has a problem physics won't waive: the horizon. An antenna skimming the wavetops can see only a few miles of Earth before the planet itself gets in the way. So the Phantoms put a second aircraft in the sky, high over the free side of the line. A relay drone flies lazy circles, a cell tower with wings. The job Ukrainian reconnaissance drones like the Shark fill on strikes past 50 kilometers. It catches the operator's uplink and bends it down over the horizon to the strike zone and carries the camera feed back the other way faster than a human can blink. That's the whole trick that lets the trained pilot lay a crosshair on the window of a moving cab from another oblast, correcting for wind he can't feel and the slipstream on a wing he'll never touch, from a chair. Try to break that link and the problem turns ugly for Russia. The Zhitel track down the corridor was built to jam the addresses drones were expected to live at: satellite navigation, satellite phones, cellular bands. This control channel lives at none of them. Before any jammer can shout a link down, it first has to find the frequency. And hunting one narrow, unfamiliar channel across the whole spectrum while the drone closes at nearly 2 miles a minute is like searching a stadium for one conversation after the fourth quarter is already started. The train has one defender left, the best one, saved by geography for last. And if the drone had crossed its arc 90 seconds earlier, up high, this is where the morning ended. A turret beside a farm road, half a mile off the tracks, has held this drone on radar for a full minute, waiting for the fire solution to settle. Its radar works by shouting into the dark and timing the echo. And unlike the Pantsirs, it's been getting a clean answer back for 60 straight seconds. Nothing about the tracking failed here. The commander gives the order, the same order he's given a dozen live shoots on ranges where everything worked. The turrets lose, the tubes come up, and the fire control computer refuses the shot. Tor M1, NATO name SA-15 Gauntlet. 8 missiles in vertical tubes, a system built to end exactly this kind of morning, and every one of them just got knocked out by geometry. Each of those missiles screams out of the tube at around 1,900 miles an hour, plus 30 G in the turn, 30 times the force of gravity, more than triple the load that blacks out a trained fighter pilot, and reaches out 12 kilometers against anything that flies. What none of them can do is touch anything closer than roughly a mile. The missile screams straight up and needs airspace to tip over and line its nose onto a moving intercept point. By the time the computer had this one solved, the drone was already inside that minimum. 8 missiles, all dressed up, nowhere to shoot. The commander keys the net anyway, all posts. Drone inside minimum range, tracking down the rail line, guns only. There are no more guns on this stretch of line. The pilot can see the Tor's turret tracking him, and he knows down to the meter what that blind cone is worth. 3 clocks are running against him at once. The train is 4 miles and 6 minutes from the siding that saves it. The Tor needs about 20 seconds of clean geometry to take the shot it's already solved. And the FP-2 has burned 175 of its 200 kilometers getting there. 9 minutes of fuel, 1 approach, no second pass. A go-around means climbing straight back out of the blind cone into a basket of 8 waiting missiles. The only safe air in the sky is the one place the Tor can't reach. He puts the nose on the cab, and he holds, through the last tracer, through the turret swinging on him, all the way down. The Tor commander knows his own minimum range too. He watches the drone bore in through the edge of his side anyway, hoping the geometry lies to him just once, but it doesn't. 90 seconds. The drone rolls the last few degrees onto the aim point, and the whole airframe drags left, the wingtip hole from the level crossing ripping wider in the slipstream, hauling the nose off the cab and toward 42 wagons of diesel. He feeds in right stick and holds it there, flying a bent wing with a boot on it, watching the crosshair crawl back down the hood toward the glass. It comes back onto the cab with 40 seconds left. 6 minutes ago, that hole was a miss. It just came within one wingspan of putting the warhead into the fuel. 30 seconds. 2 miles back down the line, the crossing gates are still down, red lights blinking at an empty stretch of country road in the early light. In the lead cab, the driver catches a low glint holding steady over the rails and knows exactly what holds steady over the rails. No time to brake. He shouts one word, and both railwaymen go through the rear cab door and down the engine room corridor, putting 2 diesel engines worth of steel between themselves and the windshield. 10 seconds. The frame fills with windshield glass of an empty cab. At 06:12 local time, the FP2 buries its warhead in the front of the lead section. 1 second. That's the whole event. The warhead is an adapted OFAB-100, a Soviet pattern aerial bomb, 121 kilograms of forged steel wrapped around 44 kilograms of TNT RDX mix bolted into a plywood and carbon airframe. It tears the cab open and cuts the brake train line, a single air pipe at 70 psi running the length of the train, and the only thing holding 42 sets of brake shoes off the wheels. Behind the cab, 2,800 tons of diesel coasting. The warhead doesn't stop this train, the train stops itself. Every shoe on every axle clamps down at once, obeying a piece of 19th century plumbing George Westinghouse designed for the exact moment a train comes apart. He was picturing a coupling failure. It works just as well on a warhead. The blast doesn't stop at the glass either. Overpressure and a sleet of casing fragments sweep the racks behind the front bulkhead, the electronics any replacement crew would need to move this thing again. This train isn't merely stopped, it's finished. Welded across the main line, 4 miles short of the siding. Tow trucks don't come in this size, and on the far side of the rear section, 2 railwaymen climb down the ladder and put distance between themselves and the rails, the only 2 pieces of this train still moving under their own power. If you enjoyed this video, watch how Ukraine took out a city Russia could not afford to lose. Bye for now.